Hi everyone, and welcome back to Genealogy and Decoding Your Y-DNA, a series about how Y-DNA testing can help us explore our paternal lines. My name is Jeremy Lehman, and I am a genealogist who loves weaving DNA into family history research. Be sure to check out a link to all of the videos in my Decoding Your Y-DNA series in the video description or down in the comments. And if you're enjoying the series, I would love it if you subscribed to my channel. In this video, we'll take a closer look at Y-DNA target testing. You may have heard about the phrase target testing. The term comes up quite a bit with DNA research. Generally, when we speak of target testing, we refer to a person actively reaching out to someone else and asking them to take a DNA test. Target testing can be helpful for autosomal DNA research, where it is important to try and test your oldest living ancestors, such as a parent or grandparent. It can also be useful to reach out to other close relatives, such as aunts, uncles, and cousins, and ask them to test. With autosomal DNA research, most of the target testing outreach is with close relatives who know you and may be willing to help you out. Target testing in Y-DNA can take on a couple different forms. It is used, for instance, anytime you want to study a surname in your family where you cannot test yourself. For example, let's say that I want to study the Y-DNA lineage of a surname in my family tree that isn't my own layman surname. In order to do this, I would need to ask a male relative to take a Y-DNA test who descends through the direct paternal line from the family I'm interested in testing. I have done this for several surnames found in my family tree. Many times, this involves reaching out to relatives who I know, akin to autosomal DNA target testing. But target testing in Y-DNA research gets more complicated when you're looking to expand on the initial research of a surname by testing a second individual. Having a second person test is critical for making Y-DNA discoveries within a genealogical time frame. I talk about this in my updates to your Big Y block tree video, which you should check out if you haven't already. By having more than one person from a family take a Big Y test, you can transform the Big Y block tree by either refining a haplogroup or breaking up an upstream block of mutations. These are among the most exciting discoveries you can make with Y-DNA research. They are also some of the hardest discoveries to make. In fact, I believe this type of Y-DNA target testing to be among the most, if not the most difficult task of anything you can do in genealogy. It involves painstaking genealogical research, along with harnessing your powers of persuasion. Let's dive into what is involved in Y-DNA target testing and how you can increase your chance of success. What makes Y-DNA target testing so difficult is that you need to find the most distant relative along a paternal line and have them take a Y-DNA test. How exactly do you do this? The first step is to build back your tree along a paternal line, tracing back the line from generation to generation using traditional genealogy research. Your mileage will vary depending on the availability of records. Hopefully, you are able to trace back a paternal line 200 years. And if you are lucky, you might be able to go back 300 or 400 years or more. This work can be challenging, but also a lot of fun as you trace back your own ancestry along a specific paternal line. The next step is where the level of difficulty ratchets up a notch. Once you have traced back a paternal line as far back as you can, you will then want to look for adjacent sibling branches and start to build down these lines to the present day, concentrating on direct male line descendants. With Y-DNA research, your focus will want to be with direct male line descendants in order to ensure that these men are from the same Y-DNA lineage that you are studying. This work can involve a lot of trial and error as you build down lines in the hopes of finding male line descendants. A great analogy for what this is like comes from the game of Plinko, from The Price is Right. Here in the United States, I grew up watching The Price is Right game show, which has been around for over 50 years and is currently the longest running game show in the world. It's a TV show beloved by many from my generation, as we would watch it whenever we were sick. Back then, there was no Netflix or Disney Plus. The daytime TV options were a lot more limited for children. But as a kid, you could always look forward to the late morning hours when The Price is Right would air on broadcast television. The show features a series of challenges in which contestants guess on the prices of products that they could win. In order to be called on down as a contestant, you usually have to be an energetic member of the studio audience. And these contestants then bring this high level of energy and excitement to the games that they play. One of my favorite Price is Right games is Plinko. It's a game where contestants earn a certain number of Plinko chips, which they then drop into a vertical Plinko board where they can earn various amounts of money. The Plinko board is covered in a grid of metal pegs, which leads the Plinko chip to bounce around as it makes its way down toward the bottom slots. The stakes are high in a Plinko game. If a bounce goes the right way, a single Plinko chip could net a contestant $10,000. But there are also slots where a contestant could earn absolutely nothing. It all comes down to the random bouncing of the Plinko chip as it makes its way down the board. This game is an excellent analogy for the work involved with tracing down an adjacent paternal lineage. You may get some momentum with tracing down a paternal line for several generations, only to be thwarted when a particular line yields no surviving sons. This is like getting $0 in Plinko. Alternatively, you might be able to successfully trace a paternal lineage into the modern day, which is like hitting the jackpot and winning that $10,000 prize. The tracing of these lines takes random twists and turns, which can make it a bit of a roller coaster ride. One useful website I have found for tracing down paternal lines is Genie.com. Genie is a family tree website that operates under the World Family Tree concept. The platform allows you to connect your family members to a working tree of all of mankind. If you are able to find the profile of a specific person of interest from the past on Genie, you can then search among his descendants for those who share his Y-DNA lineage, which can help identify certain descending lineages to focus on. Genie's data is only as good as the underlying supporting documentation. So always be sure to verify the research as you make your way down a line. I would also recommend searching through family trees on genealogy websites for the specific ancestral line that you are researching. If a tree owner happens to share a surname with the family you are studying and also shares the names of ancestors with the branch you are researching, that's a great sign that you are on the right track with finding living male descendants from this branch. Having done this type of work a lot, I have come away with a greater appreciation for how challenging it can be to find men alive today who are male line descendants from a particular family. Finding male line descendants is simply really, really hard. A good example comes from my Lehman family. I have a lot of close male relatives with my Lehman surname, but it thins out quickly the further back you go. I traced my Lehman line back to the 1820s to a third great grandfather who was one of 4 Lehman sons. You would think there would be plenty of Lehman surnamed male descendants alive today from these 3 brothers. But you'd be wrong. Despite these 3 brothers having many living descendants today, I have only been able to find 2 living Lehman surname males from these lines. The work to find living male descendants can be quite tricky as you approach the modern day. This is due to the fact that family trees protect the identities of those who are living. Living people are always designated as private on trees, and so it can be difficult bridging the generational gap between the last deceased male ancestor and his living male descendants. Obituaries can be quite helpful with identifying these living male descendants, so always look to those if they are available. Living people may also show up on genealogical records, such as an older United States census, or they can be identified as owners of a particular family tree. So now you've built your tree all the way back, have brought it forward to the present day along an adjacent line, and have identified a male line descendant who would be ideal for Y-DNA testing. Congratulations on getting this far. But now comes the toughest step of all. Once you have identified a living male line descendant, you now need to figure out a way to connect with that person and convince them to take a Y-DNA test. Unlike with the other forms of target testing we've described, these individuals will usually be very distant relatives. Think more like a 7th cousin or 10th cousin, as opposed to a close 1st or 2nd cousin. And so what this means is that the person you wish to connect with will be, for all intents and purposes, a complete stranger. Imagine being on the receiving end of this. Let's say you're a normal person going about your day, and you suddenly see a message that reads something like this. Hey there, my name is Jeremy, and I love genealogy. And guess what? I just learned that you're my 10th cousin. Isn't that cool? Would you like to take a Y-DNA test and help me out with my research? If you come across a message like that, you're probably going to think that it's a scam. You're almost certainly going to ignore the message and possibly even block the sender. Clearly, reaching out in this way isn't going to lead to your best chances of success. So how exactly should you go about doing this? Here are 7 tips for how to connect with such a relative and put yourself in the best position to get him to agree to take a Y-DNA test. Number 1, carefully consider who you reach out to. Even if you have identified an ideal Y-DNA candidate, he may not be the person you want to first connect with. My recommendation is to try and seek out a relative of the candidate who has previously expressed some level of interest in genealogy and family history. Perhaps he has a close relative who maintains an online family tree, or has taken an autosomal DNA test, or he has a close relative that has posted on social media about their family history. I have found that an individual will be much more receptive to connecting with you if they share an interest in family history. If the Y-DNA candidate himself is interested in family history, consider yourself very lucky. But even if not, there may be another family member who is, and who might be a better person to connect with first. When the time comes, they may serve as an important intermediary connecting you with a Y-DNA candidate. Number 2, carefully consider how you will initially reach out. I personally have found the most success with connecting with people via email. But finding an email address oftentimes isn't easy. If you aren't able to find an email address, consider reaching out to them via social media channels. Or if they have a profile on the genealogy website, consider sending them a message through the website's internal messaging system. It may make sense to try and connect with a person through multiple channels to increase your chances of receiving a response. Number 3, first impressions matter. You've probably heard this a lot. It applies to dating, job interviews, and yes, even Y-DNA courtship. It's important that you make a positive impression when you first connect and present yourself in the best possible light. How this looks can vary depending on who you are connecting with. That's why it's important that you try and learn as much as you can about the person you are looking to connect with. If they have a public social media account, this can provide valuable insights into who they are and what they value. And you can tailor your initial message to make it more appealing to them. My general recommendation, though, is to keep an initial message short and to not bring up Y-DNA testing at all. Keeping things at a high level at the outset is usually your best bet. Number 4, show interest in their personal family history. You may be reaching out to an individual with the hopes of scoring a Y-DNA test. But keep in mind that this person has a rich personal family history that is worthy of exploration. Expressing interest in their family story will show them that you care about their family and will give you a better chance of forming a connection. This is something that comes naturally to me with my passion for genealogy research. Whenever I connect with a family member, I am eager to learn more about their lives and their family history. If I am able to connect with an individual, they usually can tell that I am serious about genealogy research and that I genuinely want to learn more about their family. Number 5, be forthright and transparent when you bring up Y-DNA testing. At some point after you initially connect with a Y-DNA candidate, you will need to bring up the topic of Y-DNA testing. It's important that you be able to articulate why having a Y-DNA test is so important to your research and how it can be transformative to them to learn more about their paternal line. This moment can be incredibly stressful, as it's a moment when you are expressing vulnerability and laying everything out on the line with the hopes of receiving a positive response. Number 6, be prepared to educate them about Y-DNA testing. Y-DNA is still a niche topic, even within the realm of genealogy. It's likely that the person you are connecting with is not as familiar as you are with Y-DNA testing. That is precisely why I've made this Decoding Your Y-DNA series. There are now materials that you can offer so that a Y-DNA candidate can learn more about what Y-DNA testing is all about. In particular, I'd recommend the first couple videos in the series, as well as the benefits of big Y testing and the addressing privacy concerns with Y-DNA testing videos. And number 7, be prepared to help finance the cost of the Y-DNA test. Let's face it, Y-DNA testing is expensive. Trying to convince someone about the merits of Y-DNA testing and having them pay for a test themselves can often be too steep of a mountain to climb. If you are financially able to, I would recommend that you help offer to pay for the Y-DNA test. It helps reduce friction associated with the sticker shock of a Y-DNA test, and it shows that you are serious in your desire to have this person tested. Hopefully these tips help you with convincing your Y-DNA candidate to agree to take a Y-DNA test. But it's important that you also be prepared to be met with rejection. It is a Herculean task to convince a distant relative to take a Y-DNA test, and you're never going to convince everyone. And it's important that you be comfortable with that reality and be okay with rejection. I think for me, this has been the hardest lesson that I have had to learn over the years. It takes so much hard work just to get to the point of asking someone to take a Y-DNA test. You are on the brink of being able to test important hypotheses and prove out connections in a way that can only be done via Y-DNA testing. And it is precisely at this dramatic moment that your hopes can be crushed by a simple "no, thank you," or "no, I'm not interested." It's deflating, to be sure, and immensely frustrating. But know that a no today does not mean a no forever. You may be able to identify other Y-DNA candidates from this family in the future. Or this Y-DNA candidate may have a change of heart down the road. Genealogy research takes time, and the path is not always linear. Do not give up hope. Even if you are successful with convincing a person to take a Y-DNA test, more surprises may be in store. When he receives his results, it could prove to be inconsistent with the relationship that you had documented. When a result like this occurs, it means that the science does not support the documentation, and that the individual likely is not a paternal line relative within a genealogical time frame. This can also be a hard pill to swallow, both for yourself and for the tester. But for me, it is important to know the truth and to be grateful to be able to discover this truth thanks to Y-DNA testing. I want to conclude by sharing my own personal journey in finding a second tester in my layman line that hopefully can help inspire you. For years, I had tried to identify a distant layman family relative for Y-DNA testing. As I mentioned, it was slim pickings based on the scarcity of layman men alive today. But thanks to the 1950 US Census, which was released in 2022, I was able to identify an individual who I thought was from my layman family. I initially reached out to him directly via email and social media. For months, I heard nothing back, and I figured I would never receive a response from him. But then, one day, I received an email with a message from this individual who told me he would be visiting the city that I live in and that he would love to meet up with me and learn more about his layman family. There was still hope. I leapt at the opportunity, and the following week, I found myself in a cafe meeting face to face with this potential layman cousin of mine. I did not want to squander this moment, and so I came prepared with all sorts of interesting documents I had found tracing back his paternal line from generation to generation to our shared ancestor born in 1791. And he seemed interested in learning more. We probably spoke for about 3 hours in that cafe, long after we had concluded our meal. And as our conversation was wrapping up, I knew it was time for me to pop the question. I had a family tree DNA Big Y test kit that I had brought with me and asked him if he would be willing to take a Y-DNA test to help prove our connection. The next 15 seconds seemed like an eternity. I had played out in my mind the scenario where I was met with rejection and was mentally prepared to hear it from him. But after taking a few moments to think it over, my layman cousin turned to me and said, "Sure, I would love to." The rest, as we say, is history. The very next day, he had already taken the test and had shipped it back to Family Tree DNA's lab in Houston. And a few months later, we received confirmation that we were in fact layman cousins. His test proved our descent from the same hypothesized layman family. And my Big Y block tree was forever transformed, as my terminal haplogroup was refined with our 6 shared mutations. These are the moments you dream of when you begin your Y-DNA journey. They are the highs that propel you forward and show you the possibility of what you can achieve if you put in the work and have some luck go your way. I had climbed the mountain and accomplished one of the toughest tasks that I have ever faced in my genealogy research. And I was hooked. I knew that I wanted to achieve discoveries like this in other surnames in my family tree. I hope this video has given you a closer look as to why Y-DNA target testing might be the most formidable challenge that genealogy has to offer. It takes a lot of genealogy research to build back your family tree hundreds of years along a paternal line, and then to bring it forward using an adjacent paternal line, all in the hopes of identifying a potential living Y-DNA candidate. And once you find that candidate, the next phase of the work begins, that of connecting with a distant relative and convincing him to take a Y-DNA test. Believe it or not, there are some people in the genealogical community who scoff at Y-DNA testing and question its relevance to genealogy. My response to those naysayers is they clearly have not tried target testing themselves, and they aren't truly taking their genealogy research to its maximum potential without having done so. Have you tried target testing in your Y-DNA research? What has your experience been like? And what tips can you share that have worked for you? I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. And if you're enjoying this series, be sure to like and subscribe. Let's keep decoding your Y-DNA together.